Hey everybody, welcome back for some Evolution Legends content. And today we're going to continue our faction overview series. And we're going to be taking a look at the Dungeon faction today. Now I know there's some different opinions out there about how good this faction really is, but I think it has some really interesting heroes that you should take a look at. So let's start with looking at Zarkon. First of all, the artwork on Zarkon is really cool. I love the menacing look of this character. The mist coming off his armor and the horse and his glowing sword. Just a really cool looking hero. And now he's a support hero that has some interesting abilities. Let's take a look at him. Death Slash. So Death Slash sacrifices blood, depleting 15% of current HP and dealing true damage equal to 160% of depleted HP to all front row targets. So he basically harms himself, takes an HP hit, but the trade-off there is he's doing true damage to the enemy line. And that can be really helpful, especially when you're dealing with tanks that have a lot of armor and a lot of damage mitigating stat lines. So if they're low on health, but have some armor or shield or something like that, this is going to ignore all that, and it's probably going to kill them. So that's very helpful, very good ability. His second ability, Army of the Dead, awakens the power of death. At the end of the round, all allies who died that round are resurrected as a skeleton, inheriting the allies' stats and 40% HP. So it's important to note, so this can happen multiple rounds, but it can only happen once per ally. So he basically, if your ally dies at the end of a round, he's going to resurrect a skeleton in their place that's going to inherit their stats and start with 40% of that ally's total HP. So very helpful. I mean, big effect, especially if you take a lot of damage from a Vebulon or a big AoE that takes out 2 or 3 heroes at once. And Zarkon survives. He's basically going to res skeletons in their place, and the enemy's going to have to deal with them as well. So very cool ability. The downside to it is that if he's CC'd at the time, it's not going to trigger, and that's it. So if that happens, that's pretty painful. It really hurts his overall impact if he's CC'd too much. All right, life transfer. So HP increases by 40% and gains 1.5 leech for each 1% of HP lost. So obviously this was there to really help mitigate the effects of his ultimate, which when he damages himself, he's going to do that true damage to the enemy line. He needs a way to help his survivability, and the way that is he gets a leech effect for his abilities. So pretty cool. And then finally, Advanced Resurrection. Its passive skill has a 50% chance to revive a skeleton general when using Army of the Dead. The skeleton general has 10% extra HP and more powerful skills. So yeah, instead of resurrecting a regular skeleton, he'll resurrect a slightly more powerful skeleton than the skeleton general. I don't know what all the abilities are of that general, but in my experience fighting them, the only thing that I see that's different is, one, he's a little bit tougher, hits a little bit harder, but two, the skeleton general has a retaliation effect. So anytime you hit him, he's going to immediately retaliate back to your ally. So that can be really annoying sometimes. So, but overall, really cool hero. Love to look at him. The look of him, he looks really cool. I recommend giving him a try. Let me know what you think of him. Okay, let's take a look at the next hero, Talon. So Talon, again, artwork's pretty cool on him. Who doesn't love a purple fire-breathing dragon? Definitely looks awesome. He's an attack hero. I've seen a number of tier lists with him rated pretty high. Usually around tier 1, tier 2, something like that. But usually in tier 1, never the top tier tier 0 or anything like that. But I think a lot of people like him. So let's take a look at the effects that he some of his skills and just see why. So Withering Breath unleashes a raging fire on the enemy, dealing 270% of attack damage to all front row targets. That's a lot. 270% of attack damage to all front row targets is a pretty hard hit, and the fact that he's doing it to that whole front line, he has the ability, if you've been chipping away at that front line, to basically his ultimate could wipe out that whole line in one hit. So definitely really useful. Okay, and his second ability is Dragon Rage. So when Talon is attacked and hit point falls below 30%, it will immediately summon flames to attack the enemy, dealing 130% of attack damage to all enemies. This can only be triggered once. We've seen this mechanic in other heroes where when their hit point drops below a certain amount, it triggers some big effect. This is his. It's basically a big fireball that hits the enemy line, the enemy team actually as a whole. And when you're playing against him and your team's kind of low on health, this can be pretty devastating when this triggers, and it could basically wipe out a couple of your heroes all at once. Again, this can be mitigated through like CC effects. This will only trigger if he's not CC'd. And then Dragon Might. When casting Dragon Rage, we'll use Dragon Might to all the enemy, reducing the target's attack and armor by 18% for 2 rounds. So again, pretty cool effect. So he's going to cast that big fireball. It's going to hit the whole team, and in addition to doing the damage, it's going to reduce all the enemy heroes' armor by 18% for 2 rounds, and reduce their target as well. Reduce their attack and armor by 18% for 2 rounds. So that's that's pretty powerful. And then Immortal Dragon. Attack increases by 40%, HP increases by 20%, and skill damage reduction increases by 20%. So skill damage reduction, I believe it's just damage mitigation against skills cast on like ultimates. So really interesting hero. If you guys watched one of my previous videos, one of my previous summon videos, I got like multiple copies of him like in all my 10 pulls. So I have a lot of copies of Talon. I know that a lot of people like him. I'm going to take him to Mythic. I just need enough fodder to do that. But once I get enough fodder, I'm going to take him to Mythic and see how he does in my lineup. I think he looks cool. His abilities are cool. And yeah, I'll follow up and with how he did. Okay, Ungreal. So Ungreal's a tank. Ungreal is probably my favorite dungeon hero. I use him in my lineup. I try to fit him into most of my lineups, and yeah, I'll tell you why. I'll show you why in a second. So his artwork's really cool. There's a lot going on here. Giant bug-looking thing. He just is pretty awesome looking. Ungreal is just a really powerful tank. He's got a lot of HP, and one of the things I like about him most is he has a stun effect that when it procs, it stuns for 2 rounds. I mean, that's huge. And it has a chance to hit both the frontline target that's in his lane and the backline target. So if that procs for both targets early in the game, it basically becomes a 6-on-4 battle, which I like definitely is a huge tilts the balance in your favor. Obviously, let's talk through his abilities here. So the ground spike. This is what I was just talking about. Burrowing underground and create spikes, dealing 220% of attack damage to the target and target behind it, with a 40% chance to stun the target for 2 rounds. So a 40% chance is, I mean, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good chance that that's going to trigger. And the fact that it lasts for 2 rounds is just huge. That's why I like to run him, because he could be really useful if you have a particularly like troublesome enemy that you're fighting. It's like if it's like a Malistor that's really decimating your team, or if it's like a Vebulon in the back line that's really giving you problems. You basically put Ungreal in that lane, and if he's able to proc that stun, basically just takes him out of the game for 2 rounds, which is really, really huge. That gives you time to take out some of the support heroes around in the enemy lineup and then focus down the problem. So I love that ability, and it stacks really. So in this game, usually if two 1-round stuns or CC effects stack at the beginning of the next round, both of those CC effects will disappear. But because this is a 2-round stun, if it stacks on a 1-round stun, this stun will stay in effect for another round still. It won't just go away like the other ones do. So that's another thing to consider here. It's really big. Okay, Dark Swarm. When Ungreal is attacked and its HP falls below 40%, it will immediately cast Dark Swarm, dealing 180% of attack damage to 3 to 4 random enemies with a 35% chance to encircle the target for 4 rounds. Targets encircled by the swarm will be blinded, and all burning damage they take will be increased by 15%. Again, this could only trigger one time. This is pretty helpful. I mean, I like the fact that that's an AoE effect. It does some okay damage. If you like, one of the things that I'm trying with him right now on my alternate account is to pair him up with some burn damage heroes like Spirik, and see how this extra 15% of burn damage can help buff the overall team's DPS if you just put him in with a team that synergizes nicely. But overall, it's a nice AoE effect. Not the main reason I run him. The main reason I run him again is that first ability, his ultimate, that does the 2 stuns. Insectoid Armor, passive skill, HP increases by 70%, armor increases by 30%. Just stats. And then Spike, when attacked, 25% of damage received is dealt back to the attacker as true damage. Again, this is huge, especially for a tank. For him, he's really good survivability. He's got a lot of armor, a lot of health, and so basically, whenever an enemy attacks Ungreal, 25% of that damage received is just reflected back at the enemy hitting him for true damage, and so that means that damage is going to ignore any mitigating or armor effects or anything like that. So that's a really nice passive ability. So I like Ungreal is awesome. Give him a try. I try to put him in all my lineups and see if I can work him in. I think he's amazing. So one of the best dungeon heroes in my opinion. Okay, Hexis. Hexis, really cool, Grim Reaper looking thing, really neat artwork. He's an attack hero, and he's got some unique abilities that like are really helpful in certain situations. Like I've been in situations like where I've been able to burn the enemy team down to like a sliver of health, but I just didn't have enough DPS to really finish him off. And this hero is perfect for those situations. So let's take a look at why. So Death Sickle. Cast Death Sickle, dealing 220% of attack damage to 3 to 4 random enemy heroes. Great. I mean, that's pretty good damage. 3 to 4 random heroes. That's his ultimate. Very cool. Dark Reaping, passive skill. Basic attacks are replaced with an attack dealing 100% of attack damage to 2 to 3 random targets. So basically what he does is he just skips around. He does random targets. He just skips around the enemy lines and hits 2 to 3 random targets. So he's interesting. Like I've run him with Arctic Heart. You guys heard me talk about that artifact quite a bit, mainly because it's a really powerful effect that artifact gives you with the ability to freeze the enemy. So the fact that he's hitting 2 to 3 enemies with his abilities, multiple enemies, that means he's got multiple chances to freeze those enemies and CC them. So just some added crowd control abilities for your team. I like to equip him with that artifact because I think it's really helpful when that freeze goes off. And then Reaper Descent. When Hexis attacks an enemy who has less than 25% HP, it will summon a Reaper to kill the target, capped at 1000% attack damage. So this is his main thing here. This is why you basically run Hexis, because you're effectively shaving 25% of the total HP off the entire enemy team if he survives the whole battle, because when they get to that 25% mark and he hits them, they're basically dead. It's a one-hit kill. And the fact that he hits multiple targets, he can take out multiple targets in one attack. So the downside to him, the hard thing is just keeping him alive. He's kind of squishy. Soul Suction. After Reaper Descent kills a target, the enemy's soul is consumed, and Hexis receives 40% of the enemy's attack for 3 rounds. Just a nice buff to just buff his damage up. He does a fairly good amount of damage to begin with, and this just makes him better as the match goes on and he starts to rack up a few kills. He gets those buffs, and he just gets better as the match goes on. So I think he's a really interesting hero, really good in certain situations. So if you find yourself fighting an enemy team that you're burning down pretty good, but they're just barely surviving, and there's a few problematic enemies that are just like clinging to life, try throwing Hexis in your lineup and seeing if he could finish them off earlier. Okay, next, Icarus. Icarus, again, really cool looking art. I think all these dungeon heroes have some pretty cool looking art. He's another support hero. This faction actually, I think it has 3 support heroes, right? Between Zarkon, Icarus, and Janice, which is interesting. Maybe that's why they're considered mainly like a weaker faction, because they're primarily a support faction. So you kind of figure out which of these heroes kind of can like fill a need for your team. You just kind of sprinkle them into your lineup. I have not used him that much. I did recently get some extra copies of him. Certainly going to give him a try. So let's take a look at some of his abilities. Weakness Curse. Curse is an enemy, dealing 80% of attack damage to 3 to 4 random enemies, and increase in damage received by that target by 30% for 3 rounds. Curse can't stack. That's interesting, right? Like, it doesn't do a whole lot of damage up front. Like, this is his ultimate ability. It doesn't really do a lot of damage to them, but it will make them weaker. So basically, they'll take a lot more damage from other heroes that do burst damage, single target damage, or AoE damage. So that's an interesting ability. I'm looking forward to trying this out and seeing what I can do. You only want to run it. You're only because it doesn't stack. There's no value in running 2 of him in your group. So keep that in mind. Bone Shield. At the end of the round, has a 50% chance to give a Bone Shield to 3 random allies, which reduces damage of the next 3 attacks by 30%. Can't be triggered when he's controlled. Obviously, CC, he won't do this. Yeah, I mean, I don't like the fact that it's 3 like random allies. I wish it was like, I wish you can like position him in your line somewhere and it'll give it to your allies that are like directly in front of you or directly next to him or something like that. So like the one right in front of him or the ones next to him. I wish there was a way to control which ones to get it, because I mean, that's pretty nice. That's a pretty good effect to reduce that incoming damage by 30%, especially if you want to put it on some like squishier, put them next to some squishier like allies that need that extra damage mitigation. But the fact that it's random kind of diminishes the effect a little bit, in my opinion. Bitter Curse, passive skill, reduces cursed enemies' attack by 25%. Allies gain a 20% leech effect when attacking cursed targets. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty significant. Right? So it's, reducing their attack by 25%, and then you get an extra leech effect. Just can help your team survive a little bit longer if they're attacking that enemy. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, not super powerful, but helpful. And then Death Curse. Cursed enemy has a 50% chance to explode upon death with broken bones, dealing 220% of attack damage to the adjacent heroes. So that's actually pretty big. That's a lot of damage. And it's adjacent, so it's like an AoE. So like, if it hits, like, it's gonna hit everybody that's like near that enemy for 220% of attack. So like that's where he can kind of do a little bit of burst damage. That's pretty cool. So I think this is an interesting hero. I definitely want to give him a try. Again, I like the heroes in this faction. I'm going to try to figure out a way like to do a build with these guys that has some synergies and see how this can stack up in some of the later game. Okay, and then finally Janice. Jaina. Yeah, another support hero. Pretty cool looking. Just this like ghost looking, witch looking thing. Yeah, she's pretty cool. Don't see her used a lot, and I think I know why. I was looking at her info here, and she has really low starting HP, right? Like this 178,362, pretty much the lowest of any of the other heroes. So that may be why people don't use her. She's just maybe a little too squishy. But she does have some interesting stats here, like with the armor break, 26.3% armor break as a base stat that's a lot, and that's pretty good. That's basically just going to like break through armor and like melt armor down, and then just start doing direct damage to the front line. So, but the challenge here is probably going to be keeping her alive. That's my guess with her. So let's take a look at some of her abilities. Spectre Breath summons a demon to spit out dark energy, dealing 220% of attack damage to the front row enemies with a 50% chance to silence the targets for 2 rounds. I mean, that sounds like a really good effect. I mean, silence is useful in certain situations. It's not great, but it can be useful in certain situations where the enemy team's just pummeling you constantly with ultimates, right? And so when a hero is silenced, they can't use their ultimate basically. And 220% of attack is pretty good. All right, let's take a look at the next ability, Dead Spectre, passive skill. When performing a basic attack, Janice summons a spectre that lasts for 3 rounds, and then commands all specters to attack random enemy heroes for 140% of attack damage with a 35% chance to silence for 2 rounds. Again, yeah, I mean, just doing 100. I mean, not super. I mean, that's not a lot of damage. 140%. It's okay, but you know, the silence effect could be helpful in certain situations. Touch of Death, attack increased by 40%, armor break increased by 20%, precision increased by 20%. Yeah, this is just helping her not miss the target. Again, doing more damage break. I mean, she can melt down tanks. Like, she can take down a lot of armor, and she can do some damage to tanks. I think that's why she can be useful. But again, that squishiness is a problem, because if she doesn't survive long, there's no point in having her in your lineup. And then finally, when Jaina dies, all remaining specters attack random enemies. Each specter deals 140% of attack damage with a 100% chance to silence for 2 rounds. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they really kind of leaned in on the silence effect with her, but just the randomness of her attacks. They do seem to do a fair amount of damage, and her armor break is useful, but just the randomness of it is you know, makes her kind of unpredictable and difficult to deal with, right? Like, so she's a bit of a liability, I think, to have in a lineup. But I don't know, if you've tried her and you like her, tell me. I'd love to hear about your lineup and the build you've done around her. Okay, so that's gonna be it, guys. Hope you liked this video. I'm gonna continue. I got 3 more factions to get through. I've got Abyss, I've got Elemental, and I've got Relic. I'll be recording those for the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for my videos. If you like this content, if this is helpful for you, you know, hit me with a sub, hit me with a like. Leave me some comments, leave me some feedback. Always looking to improve. If you feel like I need to make some changes to make this more helpful for you, just let me know. Love to hear from you. Thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.